Time now for a review of the latest grain market news. This week we were joined by Heather Ramsey from the ARC Group. We began by breaking down some of the most influencing factors that are impacting the commodity trade.
There's a lot. It's always interesting when you start looking at what's affecting the market, and the list keeps growing all the time. So right now, obviously, we were kind of hung over from the pro farmer number earlier this week. Saw some really good positive movement on corn from that standpoint. We've got some big soybean sales going on behind the scenes that haven't gained as much traction. Again, because of the numbers we saw from Pro Farmer being very supportive to a large crop of soybeans. That's up for debate on who believes that or not. But we've got soybean sales going on in the background, and I think gaining a lot of traction right now too is a concern over what the Fed is going to do with increasing interest rates. They were kind of holed up for a while there in Jackson Hole actually discussing this, and so there's some concern over what do our macro policies look like going forward for the next 3 to 6 months. So that is weighing a little bit as well. Just briefly in the headlines, I did just see another attack over in Ukraine from Russia onto one of the export facilities that we're kind of banking on seeing grain movement out of. So nothing's really shook out as of today yet on what kind of damage or what that means. But again, all of those things that we've been talking about for 9 months now are still there, and every day it's something new, a different direction. So just all the things.
You mentioned the Fed. There was a lot of attention paid on that meeting there at Jackson Hole, Wyoming. For the viewer out there who might be questioning, why does this interest rate spill into commodities? Why does that matter? Your take.
Cost of money is a huge deal for the farm. So there's the biggest reason to be concerned from a farming standpoint is you borrow money. There's very few farmers who don't borrow anything. So the idea that we don't need to worry about what the cost of money is silly. We need to know where those trends are going, what's going to be happening to us, because the front end of our business is very expensive. On the opposite side of it, looking at where prices flow or are sitting at right now, interest rate hikes are short-term, nearby reaction is negative to commodities. Strictly because then fund managers start looking for other places with better returns. They sort of want to neutralize positions. When you're dealing with huge volumes of money like they are, they want to neutralize positions, kind of feel out where they're at, and then reevaluate where they should be investing. So interest rates affect both sides. So what the Fed has to say is going to be really important going forward. But I think the biggest one to the farmer today, in my opinion, is going to be cost of money. How does that set us up going into next year on one of the most expensive crops we're going to plant ever?
Heather, we have to talk about basis. What's the adjective you'd use to describe basis locally here in Nebraska?
Exciting. It's so fun right now. We're looking at basis levels here on the very front end of harvest. Now, this is obviously a limited, acreage that we're talking about. It's either shorter season dry land. It could be some higher moisture corn going into feedlots. But between feedlots, shuttle loaders, this front end of harvest, these are some of the single best basis values I've ever booked in my life for clients. And how can you not? So I'm looking at numbers that are anywhere from $1 to $2 better than a historical gut slot harvest value. That's a big money maker, especially if you're someone who's sitting in a position where the crop looks lighter than you were expecting it, not as many bushels. It's been a tough year. You've maybe been hailed out, replanted, all of those things. So if there's a way to capture something on the front end that's really giving you multiples of value, this is something we're looking at for sure. Even into that gut slot harvest, we're starting to see pushes here in the last week, starting to see improvements between 10 and 15 cents. Obviously, the best bases in the state exist out west where the crop is the shortest, but that trickle back into the eastern portion of the state is real. We're already seeing values in central Nebraska that are on this early stuff, first half September, anywhere from 30 to 60 cents better than we expect. Last half September into gut slot October, still anywhere from 15 to 25 cents better than we expect. So we're seeing that trickle back come. And then obviously, if you look at the processor, that whole market in and of itself, you can tell they've been short this summer, and they are looking for grain. And so we're seeing that really come to the top here. When you look at basis values, your high volume rail loaders, your feedlots, and your processors, those are the places to be looking right now.
I often like to joke here on Market Journal and ask our guests if they brought their crystal ball to make predictions about the future. But if we look back at seasonal trends, we're crossing into a new month here now into September. What does seasonal trends typically look like this time of year?
Yeah, so I'll say this, as far as seasonality goes this year, the 22 new crop months have not disappointed whatsoever. They have been so in line with what we expect to see from a seasonality standpoint. Right now, we just saw a little bit of a pop, a little bit of a kick off of Pro Farmer's number on corn, a decrease on soybeans, but typically the month of September is a little bit more depressed or quiet on the future side of the equation because we're getting so close to harvest. A lot of times it's more of a wait and see mode. We'll get to harvest before we make any huge market adjustments to what maybe the yield actually is. So I would not be surprised to see a little bit of a pullback here on futures and continue to see some pressure as we get into this harvest. But again, locally, futures can be one thing, and locally basis can just outpace it all if it really wants to. So we've got some really great opportunities still, even with a lower board potentially coming our way. Going to be a great opportunity to get into harvest, get things squared up, and kind of feel whole again and figure out where everything is shaking out once we get through the field.